With the end of World War II, once great empires faced a new problem: keeping their colonies. Before World War II, Africa and Asia were dominated by the great nations of Europe. There, the land was divided among the empires. It was in these continents where the era of colonization would end. Eventually, the people of these empires called for independence, a process which continued for decades. It is because of decolonization that the map looks as it does today. Knowledge of decolonization came early for some. Clement Attlee expressed sentiments about independence in India shortly after World War II in March 1946 in a speech to the House of Commons. India is today in a state of great tension, and this is indeed a critical moment. It is a time emphatically for very definite and clear action. Let us all realize that whatever the difficulties, whatever the divisions may be, there is this underlying demand among all the Indian peoples. Is it any wonder that today she claims, as a nation of 400 million people that has twice sent her sons to die for freedom, that she should herself have freedom to decide her own destiny? My colleagues are going to India with the intention of using their utmost endeavors to help her to attain that freedom as speedily and fully as possible. Clement Attlee, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. One of the major causes of decolonization was the rising nationalist movements in many of the countries. India became independent in 1947, with Gandhi playing a huge role. Gandhi used nonviolent techniques to unite the Indian people in a common cause against the British. Gandhi asked people to set aside religious differences to unite as a nation for independence. Kwame Nkrumah was a leader of African nationalism. After working towards independence for the Gold Coast since 1947, became Prime Minister of the nation in 1952 and led his country to freedom in 1957 under the new name of the Republic of Ghana. In 1961, Nkrumah wrote on an independent Africa. It is clear that we must find an African solution to our problems, and that this can only be found in African unity. Divided, we are weak. United, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in this world. Only a strong political union can bring about full and effective development of our natural resources for the benefit of our people. War and/or resistance could not be fought by European nations because they could not afford to lose lives or money. Wilson's 14 points, although given after World War I, still provided a basis for the support of self-determination during decolonization after World War II. Within the 14 points, 9 through 12 deal with self-determination. 9. All Italians are to be allowed to live in Italy. Italy's borders are to be along clearly recognizable lines of nationality. 10. Self-determination should be allowed for all those living in Austria-Hungary. 11. Self-determination and guarantees of independence should be allowed for the Balkan states. 12. The Turkish people should be governed by the Turkish government. Non-Turks in the old Turkish Empire should govern themselves. In 1960, the United Nations issued the United Nations Declaration Against Colonialism. The General Assembly, mindful of the determination proclaimed by the peoples of the world in the Charter of the United Nations to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person, the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small, to promote social progress and better standards of life and larger freedom, declares that Point 2 of the United Nations Declaration Against Colonialism highlights self-determination. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Decolonization was a result of many factors, but mainly nationalism, high cost of colonies, and pushes for self-determination. Ultimately, nations had to decide whether they would lose their colonies with a fight, like France, or without a fight, like Britain.